What is going on, guys? It is WrestleMania here back with some more news. Join us now as we look at the wildest news stories and rumors you need to know, including the real reason why the Vision betrayed Seth Rollins. Is Seth Rollins legitimately injured? WWE talent now have trust issues. Seth Rollins' match has been scrapped. Has this put WWE into more problems? WWE release another star? And much more. Now, first story looks at Seth Rollins is legitimately injured. Our top story today takes a look at Seth Rollins' apparent injury, as we weigh up all the evidence and determine whether the injury is actually legitimate, as let's not forget the biggest ruse of the century. But when WWE delivered a Vision breakup on yesterday's Raw, one of the first thing fans assumed that Rollins was injured. It's no secret that Rollins was nursing his arm during and after Crown Jewel, and it appeared that Rollins was hurt in the coast-to-coast diving headbutt spot, which he landed right on his left arm. Several outlets have now provided an update on the status of the reigning world champion, and according to PW Insider, Rollins is indeed hurt. The angle on Raw earlier today with Bronson Reed and Braun Breaker turning on Seth Rollins was necessitated by Seth Rollins suffering an injury at Crown Jewel Perth over the weekend. The belief is Rollins hurt his left shoulder landing while executing the coast-to-coast dive towards the upside-down Cody Rhodes, who was hanging in the turnbuckles. There's no official word on the nature of the issue, but Rollins was seen sporting a sling in a photo he took with a fan Sunday evening in Australia. We're told that he will be undergoing tests in the coming days. Now, this report has been supported by Fightful Select and Body Slam, so it does appear to be legitimate. It's worth noting that a lot of sources were claiming that Rollins' injury in the summer is totally legitimate, so it is easy to see why fans are convinced that it could be a total work. WWE has played heavily into these types of angles in 2025. It wouldn't come as too much a surprise to see this become another angle for the upcoming WWE Unreal Season 2. Next up, the WWE injury kept top secret. Now, there's a lot more to this story that initially meets the eye. According to Fightful Select, specifics of the injury are being kept extremely quiet backstage. The specific details of the injury were being kept very quiet. One WWE source said individually, not on behalf of the company, that an actual break of the arm would probably end up better than a shoulder injury because Rollins could be back in December from a break. However, they said it would be unlikely that they could avoid a drastic change if it was a more serious shoulder injury. He was being careful filming segments at Raw and was hiding the injury with baggier clothes. Fightful Select also add that Rollins received praise for finishing the Crown Jewel matchup. Rollins was credited heavily from over a half dozen sources we spoke to for finishing the match, staying in Australia, and working the show. Not just that, but doing a promo, a backstage segment, and a physical segment. Though details were foggy, the hope from staff backstage was that because Rollins was cleared for the segment, that injury might not be as bad as feared. He is expected to undergo further testing this week. Now, this isn't the first time in which Rollins has suffered a devastating injury, and ironically, it's almost 10 years exactly since he was last forced to surrender the world title. Then, PW Insider followed up with another report that's just been released. There are some within WWE who believe Seth Rollins is headed for shoulder or rotator cuff surgery. We will, of course, keep you guys updated on the status of Rollins, and we hope that the injury really isn't too serious. Next up, WWE talent have trust issues. Now, it's not just fans who are questioning if Seth Rollins' injury is legitimate, as people backstage in WWE appear to have trust issues with the injury. According to the Observer Radio, due to the prior injury being a total work, there's a lack of trust present backstage. They were told it was from an injury in the match with Cody Rhodes, but after being told his other injury was legit, many are not fully believing anything right now. The lack of trust right now is pretty high. Now, this is the risk of working talent backstage, as when something legitimate happens to that same wrestler, nobody knows what's real and what's scripted anymore. To be honest, it's unlikely to be a ruse at this stage, with the countless outlets reporting that it's legitimate and Rollins evidently hurt his arm at Crown Jewel. All signs are pointing in the direction that this is unfortunately very real. As a lot of fans have pointed out since Raw, there's little for WWE to gain by having this yet be another work. Some fans are speculating that the payoff is Rollins once again outsmarting CM Punk and the Vision returning to his side when the two collide for the world title. This is just a ruse too far would heavily impact the eventual breakup of the stable. But what was the real reason the Vision betrayed Seth Rollins? Now, with it being basically confirmed that Rollins is injured, there's a lot of questions, particularly when it comes to the Vision's breakup. Was this always planned to happen? Was this a pivot as a direct consequence of Rollins' injury? Well, Fightful Select now has the answer. And according to the reputable source, the angle was indeed a huge pivot. As far as creative what is and wasn't planned, we'll get some details on that as time goes. Last week, when the Observer reported that plans for Survivor Series War Games, we were told the lineup was actually an option. Today, when we followed up, it was largely dismissed as not being the specific direction. WWE had Braun Breaker and Bronson Reed attack Rollins today, which was hinted to us was a heavy creative pivot without being explicitly stated. Fightful Select spoke to a source in WWE that indicated that they had heard that a Braun Breaker split originally wasn't planned or in the cards until next year. So, was this angle done too soon? Well, it's hard to say. The Vision faction was in essence WWE's new version of Evolution. It was mainly designed to take Broner to the next level. You could certainly argue that Breaker is already ready for the main event spot, and with Bronson Reed defeating Roman Reigns without the assistance of Rollins, it could be reasoned that this is the perfect time for the breakup. Interestingly, WWE has actively been teasing the breakup on screen for a number of weeks. During the return of AJ Lee, Breaker and Reed became separate entities away from Rollins, and during the build to Crown Jewel, Paul Heyman was causing conflict between the Brawns and Rollins. Even at Crown Jewel itself, Heyman insisted that the Brawns leave Rollins to battle Cody Rhodes alone. Therefore, if this was a pivot, it makes a ton of sense from the story WWE has been telling on TV, so they could easily get away with this being labeled as a long-term plan. Dave Meltzer on the Wrestling Observer Radio also chimed in, and according to Meltzer, the injury could be legitimate. But the hot angle could have been linked to the Raw ratings. Whether that changed the booking due to the injury, or the booking changed based on the hot shot angle, because most likely Raw today with its early start time would have done the lowest rating in the show's history. So they wanted something to make people tune in, and that could be the case. But has this put WWE into some major problems? Now, War Games is next month, and since WrestleMania, WWE has been building toward a match between the Vision and the top baby faces on Raw. And now that the faction is no more, and now that Seth Rollins is seemingly injured, where does this now leave things? Well, WWE did plant the seeds for an MFTTS versus the Wyatt 6 match on last week's SmackDown. So that could easily be the War Games match. However, that feud has certainly come out of nowhere. So it's unclear how the wider fan base would react to that feud being settled in War Games, which should be a storyline ender. When it comes to the women's match, there is an ongoing conflict between the Kabuki Warriors and Rhea Ripley and Io Sky that could transition into a War Games collision. But probably the most important question is what will happen to the world title? This is where things get a little complex. WWE committed to crowning CM Punk as #1 contender, and it was reported last week that Punk versus Rollins for the world title was planned for next month's Saturday night's main event. Naturally, if the injury is legitimate, that match is off the cards, but Punk is still #1 contender. Based on the ending of Raw, Braun Breaker is coming for the world title. So, does this mean that WWE moved forward with Breaker versus Punk's singles feud for the world title to crown a new champion? One idea that has been floating around social media is turning Survivor Series into the Deadly Games, a one-night tournament to crown a new world champion. This could work extremely well and would definitely be one of the more exciting ways to crown a new champion. Due to WWEC's branding of the PLE, they would still have to keep at least one War Games match on the card, but they could still easily deliver the tournament on the PLE. Next up, a WrestleMania match trap. Seth Rollins' injury could have significantly shaken up WWEC's plans for the biggest show of the year. According to the Wrestling Observer Radio, Rollins was initially set to face Roman Reigns on the grandest stage at WrestleMania next year, but due to Rollins' injury, the match is off the table. This of course depends on how severe Rollins' injury ends up being. And if Rollins versus Reigns is off the table, then it certainly opens the door for Braun Breaker to finally receive that big time match versus the Tribal Chief. Next up, another WWE release. Yesterday, Ridge Holland announced FireX that WWE will not be renewing his contract. Holland announced that although WWE will be cutting ties with him next month, they will commit to paying for his rehab as he's currently out of action with an injury. Holland has had a number of pushes over the years, including main eventing Survivor Series a number of years ago alongside key names such as Sheamus and Roman Reigns. Next up, a fan bought the Crown Jewel table. Now, at WWC's Crown Jewel 2025, Jey Uso accidentally speared Roman Reigns through a table, which led to Bronson recapitalizing and defeating Roman Reigns in a very shocking loss. However, WWE actually managed to sell the table afterwards. One fan dropped $2,500 for the broken table, as both Jey Uso and Braun Breaker's signature on it, And finally, Speed Wrestling for WWE. Our final story today takes a look at what exactly iShowSpeed is doing at the WWE Performance Center. A number of images have surfaced of Speed training at the WWPC, and it surfaces thanks to a report from Fightful Select. They've been filming a new show titled Speed Goes Pro. Speed was at the WWPC Monday filming for his new show Speed Goes Pro. A number of wrestlers attended the premiere for the program, which has already started its rollout. Speed is working directly with Randy Orton, who will be training Speed to see if he can compete as a WWE wrestler. This is the premise of the show, as Tom Brady was featured in the first episode. Orton was also at the WWE Performance Center today. Based on what we heard, it was reported to be the third episode of the season. WWE has remained open to him competing in a match in the future, but we haven't heard of any specific plans for such a Speed impressed with his appearance in the Royal Rumble this year. It's only a matter of time before Speed has another featured match at an upcoming WWPLE, possibly returning for the Royal Rumble again, or maybe even having a match at WrestleMania 42.